for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.
Hello, Scooby Doo fans! Welcome to my Season 1, Episode 12 review of the Scooby Doo Show. So yeah, normally today I would not be releasing a video, as today is a Monday, and normally I like to release my videos on Saturdays, but as you guys know, there's a tradition every year that I do when April 7th rolls around, and that is upload a special Scooby Doo review, because today's my birthday, and I always love doing a special Scooby Doo review on my birthday. So if you want to wish me a happy birthday in the comment section below, you're free to do so, and I thank you guys so much in advance. But thank you guys for joining me on this special day to review a particularly special episode, as I'll get on to in a minute. But last time I continued my reviews of the Scooby Doo Show with a review of Season 1, Episode 11 of the Scooby Doo Show, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. But of course today, I'll be covering Season 1, Episode 12 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled There's a Demon Shark in the Foggy Dark, which was released on November 25th, 1976. This was on Thanksgiving Day in 1976. That's what I meant by special when I said special earlier. Not just this video being uploaded on my birthday, but that this episode in particular was aired on Thanksgiving Day. How awesome is that? If you guys had any experience back in the day and got to witness this episode on Thanksgiving Day, tell me how it was, because I would love to hear your stories on what it was like viewing a Scooby-Doo episode on Thanksgiving, even though this isn't a particularly Thanksgiving-themed episode, but how cool is it that this episode aired on Thanksgiving? The short synopsis of the episode is, the gang's day of water skiing comes to a halt when they get tangled up in a mystery involving missing pearls and a million-year-old shark monster. So as per usual, I'll be watching Season 1, Episode 12 of the Scooby Doo Show on the Scooby Doo Dynamite Hour, the complete series DVD. This DVD has every episode of Season 1 of the Scooby Doo Show, as well as every episode of Dynamite. So if you want a physical media release or a physical media copy of Season 1 of the Scooby Doo Show, unfortunately, this is your only way to get that. But if you're a fan of Dynamite, then this DVD is up your alley, because it not only has Season 1 of the Scooby Doo Show, but it also has Dynamite as a bit of a bonus. Now, as far as this episode's reception is concerned, I'm not really sure how fans feel about this particular episode. For an episode that was released on Thanksgiving, this episode isn't particularly talked about as much. So I don't really know how the Scooby-Doo community feels about this particular episode, as it's not really discussed a lot in the Scooby-Doo community. So, you know, which side of the fence do I fall on? There's only one way to find out. So let's take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of the Scooby Doo Show. The episode begins on a stormy night where we see two men from India flying across the ocean and landing at an airport. The men are carrying a suitcase full of valuable pearls destined for the county museum and a shark frozen in a block of ice for Aqualand. Later that night, when the airport is locked up, the ice encasing the shark begins to melt. We then cut to the next day where we see the gang out water skiing one afternoon. Scooby and Shaggy are out on the water while Fred, Daphne, Velma are in the boat. They turn the radio on and the news broadcast reports that $2 million worth of pearls were stolen from the airport. Velma's baffled because the doors to the storage room were locked tight and the only one in there was the shark. Suddenly a real shark begins to chase the gang and they crash into a rocky cliff. They climb up the rocks to discover that they are at Aqualand, a cliffside aquarium. Upon entrance, they run into a bipedal shark monster. The gang flees and manages to lose him. Now the gang knows they have a mystery to solve. So the gang heads to the manager's office. They go into the office and meet the manager of Aqualand, Mr. Dreyfus, who may be a nod to Richard Dreyfuss, who was in Jaws. He explains that he believes their scientist, Professor Beaker, brought the shark back to life when it was transported to Aqualand. He tells them that Professor Beaker has some kind of spell book, so they go to the lab and talk with Professor Beaker, and he explains that he did no such thing. He shows them the encased shark, and the shark is still there, frozen in ice. Professor Beaker claims he hasn't seen the spell book, and so the gang goes to talk with Mr. Wells, the manager's assistant. They get separated, and Shaggy and Scooby are chased by the demon shark, while Velma, Daphne, and Fred run into Mr. Wells, who says he's never seen the shark. Which is weird, because we find out later in the episode that Mr. Wells is the man behind the shark costume. So it's kind of weird that the shark is chasing Shaggy and Scooby at the same time that Fred, Daphne, Velma are talking with Mr. Wells. Unless if we're to assume that these two events are happening at different times, which is possible because in the Redbeard episode there was a similar circumstance where Shaggy and Scooby were dealing with Redbeard while Fred, Daphne, Velma saw Redbeard walking by in the hallway and got trapped. So it could be similar to that aspect where maybe it's not running concurrently, but maybe at different times. Maybe the Shaggy and Scooby chase took place first, and then the Fred, Daphne, Velma scene, or maybe the Fred, Daphne, Velma scene was first, and then the Shaggy and Scooby chase scene. I don't know. It's just weird. It's animated very weirdly, and it confuses the audience a little bit because you're like, well, how can the shark be chasing Shaggy and Scooby if the man behind the costume is talking with Fred, Daphne, Velma? He also tells Fred and the girls that he is interested in cabinet work and is skilled in making false bottoms in secret compartments. Remember that for later, because that will be an important key clue and factor to the villain's identity, even though I just spoiled it. So Shaggy and Scooby hit up the restaurant, and in the process, they find the spell book and the demon shark. They flee, and meanwhile, Fred and the girls search Professor Beaker's laboratory, finding a pile of oyster boxes from a fish market. Then they search Mr. Dreyfus' office and find a brochure of a pearl exhibit at the museum, the same pearls that were nabbed from the airport. They also find a shipping receipt for the oysters. This makes Mr. Dreyfus look very suspicious. And then we cut back to Scooby and Shaggy, who have lost the shark but accidentally dropped the spell book into the crab tank. They scuba dive down into the pond and manage to retrieve the book and run into Fred and the girls, who discover the book they found is only a cookbook, which makes the whole scene with Shaggy and Scooby finding that book and believing it to be the Book of Spells to be mostly pointless. Although it does help them find one of the clues of the episode, but it still makes it feel incredibly pointless. The shark appears and steals the oysters that Scooby and Shaggy unintentionally fished out of the tank. What does the shark want with a bunch of oysters? Who knows, but the gang are going to figure that out. So they set a trap with Scooby acting as bait, and Scooby actually doesn't relent in this time. He actually is okay with being the bait. He's on board with it. There's no Scooby snack, bargaining. Scooby's fully on board with it, which is quite odd and honestly shows that either Scooby is not that scared of the shark, or maybe he got Scooby snacks off screen. I don't know. But it's very weird that Scooby's so, brave in this scenario. I mean, I like it, but it's very weird and out of character because normally there'd be some bargaining going on to make Scooby the bait. But this time, Scooby's fully on board with it. He doesn't care. The trap backfires, though, but the shark gets trapped anyways, and they find valuable pearls inside the oysters, the stolen pearls from the airport, and the shark is unmasked as Mr. Wells. Not surprising there, as I've already, spoiled his identity earlier. But, if you hadn't been spoiled by me, the cabinet making probably should have been that's why I said the cabinet making was important for later. Because if you clocked that, you probably suspected that, maybe that could have been a possibility for him to be the villain, and that turned out to be true. So if you were a keen observer, keeping tabs on Mr. Wells's cabinet-making skills, then you would likely suspect that he most likely could be the culprit, and you would be right. This is probably the only scene in the episode that I actually like, the trap sequence. I guess it's fun just seeing Scooby be a little bit different, out of character, be brave, and totally on board with it. He steals the oysters from the shark, and even though he messes up the trap, he still traps the shark. And Shaggy even helps a little bit because he's operating a crane that was part of the trap and traps the shark. And they help find out the most vital clue of why the shark wanted the oysters, which was because it had the stolen pearls inside it. So yeah, pretty good trap sequence. Probably the only scene in the episode that I enjoyed.
too.
Lower Scooby down, Shaggy. We trapped the demon shark.
Are you okay, Scoob?
Poor Scooby's got the chills from his dunking. I don't think so. Open wide, Scooby.
Just what we thought.
Zoinks! I know oysters can have pearls, but a whole pearl necklace?
And pearl earrings.
I've heard of oysters, Rockefeller, but this is ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous at all. Right, Fred?
Right. It all adds up to the solution to the mystery of the ghost of the demon shark. Now let's see if he's who we think he is.
It's him, all right. Mr. Wells.
So Mr. Wells was in India dredging up the demon, and he read about the pearl shipment. So he used his skill in cabinet making to make a secret compartment under the ice shark, and he arranged to have the demon and the pearls shipped on the same plane. He hid in the compartment and shipped himself back to the United States. When the shark and pearls were locked up in the airport, Wells snuck out and stole the pearls and hid back inside the compartment to be delivered back to Aqualand. He put the pearls inside oysters from Sam's Fish Market and wanted to ship them to another Aqualand in Florida to get them past police roadblocks. But Mr. Dreyfus would not permit the shipment, so he had to scare him off. Then Wells could take over the manager's job and authorize the shipment himself. Wells also bluffed about the Book of Spells to confuse everyone, so the Book of Spells was a dead end and just was something to throw everybody off and from, any suspicions that they might have had of him or his plan. Now, this is very interesting because it creates a lot of questions about how Mr. Wells was able to have such great endurance and resilience and stamina and strength to be able to hide himself under a compartment under the ice shark for a 10-hour or more flight from India to the United States of America, as well as staying overnight in a locked customs building in a United States airport until he finally would be able to get out at Aqualand. Like, how did he survive this long without any food, without any drink? What if he had to go to the bathroom? Like, there's so many questions about this. He probably went out and stretched his legs, but the fact that he went this long with without all the necessities you would need and not being able to be very bored and mentally drained like this shows how very committed of a person he must be to go through with these plans to steal these pearls. It makes him a very fascinating character that he's able to, and creates some questions about his past maybe, but also shows that he's very determined and very resilient about his plan, even if it means he has to go a while without any food or drink or even access to toiletries. So it's really something to see how dedicated he is, and it creates a lot of interesting questions about how Wells was able to endure this long without any of the necessities a human would need, and how it didn't drain him mentally that he was stuck in that compartment for so long and couldn't leave until he got back to Aqualand. Anyways, the episode ends with Scooby going back to skiing, but this time in a night costume to keep protected from the sharks. I'm going to give Season 1, Episode 12 of The Scooby Doo Show 2 stars out of 5. Yeah, this was another weak episode. I wasn't really too fond of this episode. For an episode that was aired on Thanksgiving, I could see why it might have been forgotten because, yeah, out of all the episodes there on Thanksgiving, this one would be a huge disappointment. If I was a kid back in 1976 and watched this episode on Thanksgiving morning, I would definitely be disappointed because this episode was another dud in, in line with the past couple of episodes that have either been below average or average. So we've been kind of on a streak of middle of the road to below average episodes. So we really need to get a really good episode at some point. Hopefully that'll be the next one. But yeah, this one just continues the streak of average to below average episodes. And this is another below average episode. And yeah, I just wasn't really fond of it. It was not a great episode. I could see why I don't go back to this one, and I could see why the Scooby-Doo fans don't really talk about it. But before I get into my negatives for the episode and what holds it back from being a good episode, I'll first get into my positives for the episode and what I did like about the episode. So starting with the positives, my first one is that I think Fred was a good leader in this episode, and I did think he helped create a cool trap in the episode. It's not one of his more inventive traps. It's literally just a, like, I think of like a balloon or something, some inflatable type of device where the shark was going to hit it, fall into the net, and Shaggy was going to pick it up by the crane, which it was cool that Shaggy got, a chance to be involved in the trap in a different way rather than being the bait. He was going to be the one to help capture it at the end. Obviously, things don't go according to plan, as per usual with Fred's traps. But still, he created a decent enough trap. I do like when Fred creates traps, even if they're not too, extravagant. And I do think he was a good leader. He did set a good baseline to where he told the gang where to go. Like, first, like, they're trying to phone for some help. And then when they realize there's a mystery, Fred buckles down and, they all interrogate the staff. Mainly Fred, Daphne, Velma interrogate the staff, which is actually one of the cooler aspects of this episode is the gang just kind of investigate, interrogating each suspect about, the Book of Spells and the Demon Shark and all that, and the hauntings going on in Aqualand. So that was probably the coolest aspect, the teamwork building between Fred, Daphne, Velma. But I would say Fred, out of the three of them individually, was the best because he at least fulfilled his base role of being a good leader and created a decent enough trap in the episode. Then, of course, we have Shaggy and Scooby. Shaggy and Scooby were their usual cowardly selves. They weren't particularly funny in this episode. There was one little moment that I thought was funny where, Shaggy and Scooby try to run off after their first encounter the gang has with Demon Shark, and Fred says, "Hold it, we got a mystery to solve. You want everyone to think you're a coward." And Shaggy's like, "Now that you mention it, yes." And then tries to run off again, but Fred's like, "Hold it, we got a mystery to solve." And that was kind of a nice little funny moment. Shaggy acknowledging his cowardice, and being proud of it, which is great. But otherwise, they weren't particularly humorous in this episode. They were cowardly, so they did fulfill that basic function. They did help find one of the most vital clues of the episode, which was the oysters with the pearls in it. And Scooby did act as bait in the episode and was quite more brave than he usually is. Which was interesting, and I brought up in the review how, crazy and out of character it is that Scooby wasn't really bribed this time around, but rather was just okay with it. He's just like, yeah, I'll just be the bait. I'll just do the trap. He didn't really care. Like, he was totally on board with it, and it was a nice little shake-up. Scooby didn't have to be bribed this time. Maybe he did off camera, but on camera, it looked like he did not get bribed with the Scooby snack or anything. He did the trap, and he did his job, and kudos to Scooby. He was a lot braver than he normally is, so that was a nice little character moment for him. I do think it kind of sucks that a good chunk of Shaggy and Scooby's bit when they're separated from the gang is kind of pointless, because they believe they found the Book of Spells when in reality it was just a cookbook. The only thing interesting that came out of that was them finding one of the most vital clues of the episode, which was the oysters with the pearls in them. But that was by accident, inadvertently. So that's the only good thing that came out of it. But otherwise, I just kind of think it sucks that Shaggy and Scooby, I did like the idea that Shaggy and Scooby found the Book of Spells that everybody was looking for, and it made them feel like they had a more important role in the story, when in reality it was just like a whole dead end, and Shaggy and Scooby basically was running around with a random cookbook for half of the episode, and it made their section completely pointless, instead of it being quite vital that they found one of the clues. So I really didn't like the whole aspect that Mr. Wells just used the Book of Spells to confuse everyone, because that made Shaggy and Scooby's bit completely pointless. And it kind of confused me as a viewer too, because it's like, well, what the fuck just happened with that? And then they explain it at the end, and it's like, really? Did he really have to confuse everybody with that? Why did he make up that story? What was the purpose of confusing everyone with the Book of Spells? I really didn't like that aspect. Not only confused me as an audience member until the end, but it made me think, well, what was the point of having Shaggy and Scooby running around with a fake Book of Spells and a cookbook for half of the episode, thinking that they have this vital clue, and then in reality it's not important, and the only thing they get out of it is the book accidentally getting into the pond where some of the oysters with the pearls in it are. So I kind of find that annoying, that, you know, it kind of makes some of Shaggy and Scooby's scenes a bit pointless. But otherwise, it doesn't hurt Shaggy and Scooby's character overall. It's just something that I'm very disappointed in, that, you know, I was really excited that Shaggy and Scooby found the titular Book of Spells, and it looked like they were going to play a more important role. Like, whereas Fred, Daphne, Velma were interrogating the staff, Shaggy and Scooby found the titular Book of Spells, you know, a vital clue that could, you know, piece everything together. And then it turns out to be not real, and the Book of Spells was completely made up by, you know, Wells, just as something to confuse everyone, which was stupid and pointless, because I don't understand what the point of him confusing everybody was with the Book of Spells. I don't know if that was supposed to be a scare tactic to get the manager, Dreyfus, you know, to run away at, you know, at the mention of a Book of Spells. It clearly didn't work, so I don't know why he used that. It was so pointless. It really hurt Shaggy and Scooby's scenes, and it confused me as an audience member. But yeah, otherwise, like I said, Shaggy and Scooby were great. They fulfilled their usual roles. They found one of the more vital clues of the episode, and Scooby did a great job at being very brave in this episode and acting as bait and not needing to be bribed with Scooby snacks like he usually is. Outside of costume, I actually thought Mr. Wells was pretty good. I liked that we got to see him be very good at cabinet work and was very skilled at creating false bottoms and secret compartments. I think that was a pretty cool and unique skill we hadn't seen from a villain yet. And a keen viewer that sees that would get a good indication of him. That would be a good indication of him being a villain to a viewer who was paying attention very well to the details of the episode and noticing, hey, maybe that could be a potential villain, because that could have been something the villain used to steal the jewels. And that turns out to be the case. Like, when I saw Mr. Wells' cabinet work and the fact that he was showcasing these, like, false bottoms and secret compartments, I was like, it must be him, you know, because I was like thinking, I was like, oh yeah, that must be him. And I hadn't seen the episode in a while, but I was like, that must be him, because, you know, that could have worked with, you know, the crime that was committed. There was a box underneath the shark encased in ice. He could have presumably created a, you know, false bottom or a secret compartment under there to steal the jewels. And lo and behold, that ends up being the case. The only thing that throws that off is the animation, you know, error or mistake kind of showing the demon shark chasing Shaggy and Scooby concurrently at the same time Fred, Daphne, Velma meet Mr. Wells and interrogate him. Which, like I said, is something similar to Redbeard, but it's a lot worse in this scenario, because it makes you believe that Mr. Wells couldn't really be a suspect, when in actuality he is the villain. You know, but one of those scenes might have taken place before the other. I think we're supposed to believe that the Shaggy and Scooby chase scene with the demon shark happened first, and then Fred, Daphne, Velma a little while later, after, you know, after walking along in Aqualand, met with Mr. Wells outside a costume. I don't know. That's what I'm assuming. It could be the other way around. Maybe Fred, Daphne, Velma met with Mr. Wells before that, and then Shaggy and Scooby, you know, saw the demon shark. But I don't think so, because literally seconds after Fred, Daphne, Velma walk away out of camera after they had just spoken, and Shaggy puts his hand up to the glass and is talking with Scooby, you see the demon shark right there. So I think we're supposed to believe the chase scene happened first, and then this interrogation scene with Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Mr. Wells. But it was a confusing bit that did throw off viewers into believing that Wells could be the villain, but keen viewers that noticed that detail of Wells being a good cabinet maker that had this skill of creating false bottoms and secret compartments could be like, oh, that could be a reasonable tactic that a villain could use to steal the jewels. So I did like that aspect. It made, you know, it gave a good indication of him being, you know, the possible villain, which ended up being true. but it also showcased how he had a cool, unique skill that he used to commit the crime. There were a good number of suspects in the episode. So you had 3 suspects in the episode. You had Mr. Dreyfus, who was the manager. You had Professor Beaker. And you had Mr. Wells, who was the manager's assistant. All were very equally suspicious, and there were clues scattered about in each of their locations or their offices or whatever you want to call them. So there were clues pointing towards them and the way they were acting. So they did a good job on the suspect front, especially since there was one villain and each suspect was suspicious enough. And my final positive is that I thought the clues of the episode were really good. There was a good abundance of clues in the episode. You had Mr. Wells' cabinet work, which was a good indication of him being a possible suspect. You had the brochure that they found in Dreyfus's office for the Pearl exhibit at the museum. You had the pile of oyster boxes from Sam's Fishing Market. You had the shipping receipts for the oysters. And you had the oysters in the pond that Shaggy and Scooby found, where the shark took them and stole them. And that was the final vital clue that pieced together that something was going on with those oysters. So the clues were all good. There were a good abundance of them. They did their job at, explaining, a possible motive. It, created, it didn't narrow down the suspects necessarily, but it did create a good amount of suspicion towards each suspect by having clues at each of their locations. So the clues fulfilled their purpose quite well. But that's all I got for positives, so I think it's about time to get on to the negatives of the episode and what brings this episode down for me. So starting with the negatives, my first one is I think Daphne and Velma were both weak in this episode. I really hate saying that. I know I, pick on Daphne and Velma a lot, and I don't mean to, but it just kind of feels like a lot of the times they just don't, there's just a lot of episodes where they just kind of feel like they don't write enough moments for Daphne and Velma and give them a lot individually, and this is just one of those episodes, and unfortunately, Daphne and Velma were just quite weak in this episode. Daphne didn't fulfill any sort of role in this episode, did nothing to really stand out. Velma did not fulfill her base role of piecing together the clues to help solve the mystery. There was no moment where I felt like she was looking at the clues and piecing together, the clues and what could possibly be the answer to the mystery. She wasn't really much of a leader, and she wasn't cowardly or comedic like Shaggy or Scooby. So, yeah, she just didn't have anything going for her. And even though as a collective group, Fred, Daphne, Velma were quite good when they were interrogating the suspects of the episode, individually, I think Daphne and Velma were just quite weak and just didn't get any moments to shine, and there wasn't much for them in this episode. So, yeah, for me, I just found Daphne and Velma to be particularly weak in this episode. I found the villain of the episode to be bland and uninteresting. So the main villain of the episode was, of course, the Demon Shark. I didn't find the Demon Shark scary or entertaining. Nothing about the Demon Shark was particularly scary, even though they tried to create scariness with this foggy, dark night atmosphere. It didn't work for me, and I just didn't get anything out of him, and he wasn't fun or entertaining to watch. And a shark villain is nothing new in Scooby-Doo. We had it in the new Scooby-Doo movies with, the Sonny and Cher episode. And even in that episode, despite how the new Scooby-Doo movies prioritized comedy more than it did horror, there was still some scary moments with that shark, and the sharks were a lot more fun and entertaining in that episode. In this episode, this shark was quite boring and very uninteresting. He did nothing to stand out at all. It just felt like a lesser version of the shark, gods in the new Scooby-Doo movies episode with Sonny and Cher. And, it just feels like we've done this before, and we've done it a little bit better, and it's weird saying that, because for a series like the new Scooby-Doo movies that was focused on comedy, it's weird that they were able to perfect a shark villain better than this episode, because the Scooby Doo show was more focused on horror and mystery, so you think that they would be able to make the shark more scary in this one, but nope. They didn't. They made him very boring, very uninteresting, and I found the shark in the new Scooby-Doo movies, the shark god in the new Scooby-Doo movies, in the Sonny and Cher episode, way more scarier and way more fun and entertaining than this shark. This shark was boring as fuck. I didn't find anything scary about him. I didn't find him fun or entertaining to watch. very bland, very uninteresting, and just a bit repetitive for me. Yeah, they made him glow like kind of like a ghostly like figure, but he's supposed to be a demon shark, and there's nothing really devilish or demon like about him. He just looks like a regular ass shark walking around. It's like if they gave the shark gods, a bit of a makeover with, fluorescent paint or something and made them glow a little bit. That's what this demon shark looks like. So yeah, I didn't really find the demon shark a great villain in this episode. He was so boring and uninteresting. I found the motive of the episode to be quite bland. So the motive for Mr. Wells was that he wanted to get away with stolen pearls, but he had to scare away the manager off first to achieve that goal. So despite me praising Mr. Wells' commitment to his plan and, enduring and being very resilient and creating the secret compartment or false bottom, whatever you want to call it, under the shark encased in ice, and stealing the pearls and, waiting until he gets brought back to Aqualand to dispose of them. The motive just doesn't quite work for me. It's just not interesting. I don't know what it is about it. I think, it's a money motive, but it's not a very interesting one. It has some layers to it. I mean, he wants to scare the manager off, in order to get creative control to move the pearls with the pearls in the oysters to Florida, to presumably another Aqualand in Florida. I don't know. It just sounds boring to me. Like, it just doesn't, nothing about it is interesting. Like, it has a bit of layer to it as a money motive, but not an interesting layer. And yeah, I don't know. To me, it just didn't work. The motive was very boring. It was a bland, boring money motive that just, it didn't really feel very fresh or unique or inventive. Just nothing about it really stood out, and I just found the motive to not really be a compelling one, despite the lengths he went to and the cool aspects he brought to the table with his resilience and endurance to stay under the cabinet, under the shark encased in ice for like almost an entire day, pretty much. I just don't think it was enough to be sold on this motive for me. The motive was just too boring, and I just wasn't invested in this motive. So yeah, to me, very bland, very weak motive. It's a money motive, and it has a bit of layer to it, I guess, but not enough for me. Not an interesting layer, at least. Just very boring, very uninteresting. I found the mystery of the episode to be quite weak, in all honesty. So there was only one potential mystery throughout the episode that I really saw, and that was, how was the thief able to steal the pearls when the airport customs building was locked tight? And we get the answer to that, but that only creates more questions about Wells and his backstory. If he has any backstory as a criminal or military background that he was able to achieve these feats of endurance and resilience and not being mentally drained and being derived of other necessities. Or if this was his first time and he just somehow was able to do it well on his first try. Either way, it only creates more questions, and, you're not really too satisfied at the end. And the answers you do get, kind of aren't really satisfying either, so. And then I guess you could argue that maybe another potential mystery is, why is the shark haunting Aqualand? But, I mean, if it was a demon shark and it was broken out of the ice at Aqualand, it's naturally going to haunt that particular area, so I don't really think there's much of a mystery there, because we don't really get much backstory on who this demon shark is, like if it was a person or if it was, a demon, that's taken the body of a shark. We don't know. Like, we don't know the shark's backstory, so there's not really much mystery on why he's haunting Aqualand, because you're just like, well, he's probably just haunting it because that's the first place he woke up. I mean, naturally, that's what I assume a ghost would do or a demon would do if they would, wake up in a particular place. They would just haunt that place. So yeah, not really much mystery, potential avenues, but none of them really work. And overall, the mystery just wasn't there for me. It was quite weak, and I didn't really see any potential mystery in this episode. Any potential that it had was squandered very quickly. I found the atmosphere of the episode to be quite non-existent. I felt no tension or suspense or creepiness or eeriness. Despite the episode's many attempts to try to create an atmosphere where it was dark and foggy, it was a dark night that was very foggy and all that. To me, it didn't work. It really didn't work, and it was mainly due to the villain not being the best and the setting also not being the best, which I'll get onto later. And nothing in the atmosphere or setting or villain really contributing to the atmosphere to make it good. I wasn't fearing for the gang's safety, wasn't on the edge of my seat wondering what's going to happen next. Nothing in the villain did or the setting did was particularly creepy or eerie. It just was very lackluster on the atmosphere front. Very non-existent. Didn't really feel any sort of atmosphere at all. And my final negative is that I found the setting of the episode to be quite dull and repetitive. So the main setting of the episode was, of course, Aqualand. The problem is that Aqualand is nothing new. It's an aquarium, and it's essentially very much like the Caveman episode, in fact. Very similar to that episode. It's very much like Oceanland. It's almost the same beat-per-beat location. Very similar, structures. The only thing really different about Aqualand is that they have that restaurant tower, which is kind of cool. But other than that, like this setting feels very similar in vein to the Oceanland setting in Scooby Doo, Where Are You? So not really anything new here in the franchise, and like I said before, like I don't mind you reusing old elements in Scooby Doo as long as you create something new within it, something fresh or unique in it, something to make it stand out, something good about it that can make it stand out, among the previous versions of the setting. And they just didn't do that here. They didn't do enough here to make Aqualand feel distinct from Oceanland. In fact, it feels very similar to Oceanland in a lot of respects. So yeah, to me, very dull and repetitive setting. We've seen this before, and it's nothing new, and it wasn't a very interesting setting. Nothing interesting about the setting at all. Overall, guys, I would personally not recommend this episode to fans and newcomers to the show. Despite the few positives it has going for it, this is overall a very dull and uninteresting episode that just doesn't work for me. It feels very much like a rehash of the Caveman episode, and it just feels repetitive in a lot of respects. And the villain feels repetitive to the new Scooby Doo movies episode with Sonny and Cher. With the Shark God. So it just kind of feels like we've done a lot of this stuff before, and we've done it better, and nothing really stands out here, and it just feels like a very dull and boring episode. Not one of the better episodes. I wasn't really engaged with this episode, and I just personally don't think it's worth your time. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? Do you think I'm being too harsh on it? Do you see things that I don't see? If you do, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, so let me know down below. Do you hate this episode? Are you like me? Do you consider it one of the worst episodes of the series and not a particularly good episode? And it feels very dull and repetitive and doesn't really do anything new and just feels like a rehash of older episodes in Scooby Doo, Where Are You? In the new Scooby Doo movies? I love to hear about your guys' thoughts on that as well. Or are you somewhere in the middle where you just think it's not good or bad, it's just decent and it's average and okay? I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content. Obviously, I'll have more Scooby Doo content on the way. Scooby Doo TV show reviews, episode reviews in particular. That's what I like to do. Movie reviews of Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo video game reviews and Let's Plays, and of course Scooby Doo book reviews. We're doing all the major four, and I'm not going to deviate anytime soon. There's a lot of wealth of material to go through, and I'm quite excited about it. There's a lot of Scooby Doo stuff to cover. And I want to tackle all of it because I think every piece of Scooby Doo media deserves the attention, even if it's good or bad or average. It deserves to be, you know, talked about and recognized so that people can be more well informed about Scooby Doo and know about, you know, what ones I consider good or bad or average and what you guys think you consider to be good, bad, or average. So, you know, if you love all things Scooby Doo and you want to have conversations about not just the popular stuff, but you know, every individual episode of each series, every movie, you know, whether it be direct to video or television or theatrical, animated or live action, every video game, you know, no matter what generation of consoles it's on, and every book, no matter how old or new the book is, you know, whether it's comic books or regular children's books. Let's all talk about it and let's give it the love and attention it deserves, and let's give each other our own opinions on it and recommend, you know, newcomers what stuff they should be given, you know, what stuff they should seek out. But also not shy away from telling people, hey, at least give what I always like to say, give every piece of Scooby Doo media at least a shot and see if you like it. If you don't like it, that's fine, but always tell newcomers, you know, just give something at least one shot and see if you like it. So if you want to talk about all things Scooby Doo, you want to know my thoughts on it, you want to share your own thoughts on it, and, you know, create a conversation about it, and, you know, talk about, you know, stuff that normally isn't talked about in Scooby Doo episodes and movies and video games and books, then come join the channel and experience some amazing Scooby Doo content. So in my next video, I will continue my reviews of the Scooby Doo Show with a review of Season 1, Episode 13 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled Scooby Doo, Where's the Crew? I'm actually very interested to revisit this episode because I've remember quite liking this episode and enjoying it. So I'm actually really excited to see if this episode will finally be on the good side and we'll finally get back to some good episodes. I really hope so. But I'm really excited to tackle this one and, you know, see if it still holds up. So if you want to know my thoughts on Scooby Doo, Where's the Crew? Season 1, Episode 13 of the Scooby Doo Show, then come join me next time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, peace out.
We got it all together for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.